Okay, apologies about that. I'm in. We're gonna play it solo. I think is gonna be the best way to show this activity. I'll do mine. Being awake, I guess I don't really need to read it. Normally people kind of read it themselves. Being awake for 16 hours has the same effects on the brain as if you've had a blood alcohol level of, I know the answers because I made it. Yeah, it's of 0.05, which kind of roughly equates based on the average height and weight of the American of 2 drinks. And so my little fun thing was, you know, imagine doing surgery after having 2 beers. Could not imagine that. That would be crazy. Before color television, only 15% of people dreamt in color. And that is true. So I just thought that that was kind of an interesting fact that, you know, color is all around us, but television has had such a profound effect on our dreams. And then why are we paralyzed during sleep? To prevent ourselves from injuring ourselves during sleep. So the fun fact about this is we developed paralysis in sleep after we became ground sleepers. Because, you know, we used to sleep in trees, and obviously being paralyzed in a tree would have been dangerous because we would have fell out of it. So shout out to Homo erectus for that one. What does REM sleep provide? It's all of the above. Yeah, this is why REM sleep is so important. It essentially helps us shape the brain. It helps us be more emotionally intelligent as compared to other mammals, and it gives us the ability to dream, which other animals have been proven to dream, but it is unknown how you know, detailed and lucid those dreams are. And what does non-REM sleep do for the brain? Yeah, it's responsible for memory conservation. So it transfers all of your memories from one side of the brain to the other side of the brain, which helps us, you know, retain information and memories. It's also helpful for recalling information, which is why it's so important that when you're studying and stuff, that to not pull an all-nighter, because that will actually do the opposite of what you want it to. How many Americans are not receiving enough sleep? I believe it was... Yeah, 40%, according to the CDC, are not receiving enough sleep. So almost half of us. That is quite a big number. Yay. Okay. So that's my little activity. I've had about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes roughly for that. Sorry, my iPad doesn't seem to want to work today. Let's try refreshing it. There we go. Okay. Skipping through all this, so I guess I'll just have another tab open with Kahoot just to make it easier. All right, so to start off with, what defines high quality sleep? Good quality sleep looks like a lot of things. 7 to 9 hours for the average adult. Of course, there are studies that say that women might need more than that, more like 8 to 10 hours. Going through multiple cycles of non-REM, deep non-REM, and REM sleep, which are your 3 main cycles of sleep. Going to bed and waking up at relatively the same times, and you should wake up feeling well rested and refreshed and ready to get up. I'm kind of going to touch a little bit on the second point here. Non-REM deep REM and REM sleep are your three main cycles. At the beginning of the night, you are more in non-REM and deep non-REM sleep, whereas later in the night, you have more REM sleep, but you'll cycle through those continuously throughout the night. And they say that the average cycle is about 3 hours. So it's why it's very important to get more than, 3 to 6 hours of sleep. And it's also why it's very important to go to bed and wake up at the same time. Because, unfortunately, we can't catch up on sleep. That is a myth. It is not true. Once you miss out on that sleep, you cannot get it back. Even with naps, even with, sleeping in on the weekends. But if you go to bed later in the night, just because you're going to bed later doesn't mean that your brain can catch up. So unfortunately, you will miss out on that non-REM and the deep non-REM sleep. If you wake up earlier, same thing, you'll be missing out on REM sleep. So, that's why they do say it's important to go to bed and wake up around the same times. Keep your circadian rhythm in check. A lack of sleep can lead to a ton of stuff, and I'm sure, some of these are going to be very obvious. It might surprise you though. Falling asleep at the wheel is a huge thing. I'm going to touch a little bit more on the end, but there's a book that I read specifically in a stress and sleep class that talked about falling asleep at the wheel, and they call it micro sleeps, and they say it actually is more dangerous than driving drunk. Driving drowsy is more dangerous than driving drunk, is what they say. And that's because when you're driving drunk, you are impaired, of course, and your reaction times are slowed. But when you are driving drowsy and you have one of those micro sleeps, you are completely oblivious to the world. So you have no reaction time. So it's very important to get sleep because, I've been there, I'm sure everybody's been there, nodding off in the car. And it is so hard to stay focused and to stay awake sometimes, but it can really be life or death. Impaired viewing of performance. So you kind of along with the emotional intelligence thing, you might not be able to see how well or how bad you're doing. You don't have a good internal indicator of your own work, which of course would affect a lot of things in life, but particularly your job and career. The inability to regulate emotions. This is a big one because sleep does help us be able to recognize facial emotions, be able to just kind of get a feel for those, as well as regulating our own emotions. And I'm sure, again, everybody has experienced not getting enough sleep and feeling it emotionally the next day and feeling, very cranky, very just, short tolerance. And, this is kind of an important human quality to have, important adult quality to have. Psychiatric conditions, I kind of left this one really vague, but the two main ones, of course, are anxiety and depression. And there is also studies that link schizophrenia to long-term sleep deprivation. Of course, it's a little bit harder, but if you already are susceptible to those kinds of things, it will definitely worsen anxiety or depression. Increased blood pressure and also heart rate. This is another one where, it doesn't seem as dangerous as you think it is, or it's more dangerous than you think it is, I guess I should say. But, increased blood pressure and heart rate have been linked to so many diseases, and chronically this can cause a lot of issues that, again, can be life or death. One of those is weight gain and increased cholesterol, which of course can lead to heart problems, and also diabetes. So, diabetes is a disease that we take very seriously, and it is something that can cause just a myriad of other problems in the body as well. Weight gain and a lowered immune response. Sleeping is definitely helpful for our immune systems. We need our sleep to be able to fight off things and to also strengthen our immune system to later be able to fight off things. So sleep is very, very important for our physical as well as emotional well-being. And how does this relate to the OR? Obviously it's going to relate to any field, any job it's going to relate to, because having good sleep means performing well and feeling your best and being able to show up for work. But specifically in the OR, there's a little bit of an increased risk of sleep deprivation because those that work in the OR frequently seem to have reduced quality and quantity of sleep, which, as talked about, can lead to a bunch of things. But specifically, it can lead to a decrease in reaction time, lead to irritability, and an inability to make informed decisions, which are all very important things for the OR. I do want to get into the discussion, but I wanted to share a personal story. So, I used to work at a different facility, and I was also on the transplant team there, where they did not take very good care of their employees. And I definitely felt it. I specifically, I wanted to talk about one story, which is I knew that I was not well and that I was sick, and I texted my boss to say, hey, there's no way I'm going to be able to work. I'm not well. This is, mind you, 3:00 in the morning. And we had a liver transplant that night, and we don't have backup people. We had a very small and understaffed team. And she was like, essentially like, you have to come in. We don't have anybody to do this. And so I kind of was like, okay, I guess, this sucks, but I'm going to suck it up, and I'm just going to drink tea and, bring a bunch of tissues and shove them up my mask and hope for the best. I wound up working almost 20 hours straight, well into the morning. And while I had begun the day feeling just a little bit sick, definitely not well enough to go to work, but not like dying, classic cold symptoms, body aches, runny nose, sneezing, sore throat, that kind of thing. Something that was like, I should stay home, but I technically could work with this condition. I'm not, like I said, dying. Well, this event wound up being very hard on my body, and I wound up actually developing a bacterial upper respiratory infection, and I was sick for almost 2 weeks. I think like a little over 2 weeks. And I had to call out then because it was like, I'm so contagious. And so I just wanted to share because I feel like if you don't work in an environment like this all the time, you can feel so removed from it. And not, if you don't have to experience it, it's a lot different on the other side of things, if that makes sense. And so that kind of leads us into our discussion is, a sleep-deprived employee is awake for 18 hours, going on their 16th hour of working. How well do you think they can manage a stressful case? There are studies that show that after 16 hours, the brain physically stops working, and that it is kind of the equivalent, as we said, of having 2 drinks. And so this person has been awake for 18 hours and working 16 of those. So I would like to take some time to discuss, what would this look like in the OR? How would this, affect different people in the OR? How would this affect the team, and how would this affect the patient? And I would give about, another 5 minutes to discuss here. All right, moving on to our second point, sleep hygiene. What is sleep hygiene? I feel like this is not as commonly talked about as like having, good teeth hygiene, skin hygiene, a shower routine, that kind of thing. You don't really equate sleep with those kinds of things. So sleep hygiene looks like this, having a healthy sleep schedule, having a nightly routine, having healthy day habits, and having a very calm and quiet sleep environment. Those are kind of the 4 main points that I could think of and find for what sleep hygiene is. Like I said, it's not taking a shower or brushing your teeth. Having a set sleeping schedule. So as I discussed, earlier, it's so important to be going to sleep and waking up at around the same times because your circadian rhythm, our bodies are so good at naturally delegating and making sure that we are track of time and like, oh, we eat breakfast at 7:00 in the morning. When we throw off that routine and that schedule, it throws off everything else in our body. So this means going to bed at about the same time every night. Of course, there are going to be nights, weekends that you stay up late, but if you're going to bed at 9 p.m. During the day, or during the work week, I guess I should say, and then going out and not going to bed until 2:00 in the morning on the weekends, it's definitely going to mess with your sleep schedule. Making sleep a priority, and not saying, I can stay up late to finish this task, which I know is a lot easier said than done, but sleep is one of the first things to go when we have other priorities in our life And it's unfortunate that it is that way because it should not be that way. And if you want to take a nap, I personally love taking naps. Just make sure it's not too long. They really say, somewhere between 20 to 30 is a good power nap, and anything longer than an hour can be really disruptive for sleep. And then, of course, making sure it's not near bedtime. So I think the golden rule that I kind of follow is I don't take any naps after 3 p.m. because that just is too close to my bedtime. Having a nightly routine. So, just like your other nightly routines of, oh, I'm flossing, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm getting in the shower, I'm coming out of the shower, I'm putting on lotion, I'm getting into bed, I'm putting on my noise machine, same thing. So it's very important to be doing all those things because you are preparing your brain. As I said, and we know brains are amazing with routines. Humans, we love our routines. And so by doing these things, you are definitely training your brain to be going, oh, we're brushing our teeth and we're taking our shower. It must be time for bed. And you will definitely notice that you feel sleepy. Turning the lights down, turning off your electronics, which of course I know we're all guilty of doing and it's very hard to do, but reaching for something other than an electronic, like a book, might be helpful if you'd like to do something before going to sleep. And relaxing, which is kind of hard to do. I feel like sometimes I'm guilty of, oh my gosh, I have to go to bed right now or I'm not going to get 8 hours of sleep. And so I'm jumping into bed and then I'm laying there tossing and turning for 30 more minutes because I'm all hyped up. Having a healthy day routine. These are kind of things that you should be doing during the day to help yourself be able to sleep at night, especially if you struggle with not like insomnia, having issues sleeping, I guess I should say. Getting a daily dose of sunlight. The sun is such a good indicator for our brain of sleeping and waking times. So, getting out there, making sure that your skin and your eyes are actually seeing the sun is going to be very helpful for your body. Participating in physical activities, kind of tiring yourself out. Avoiding caffeine in the afternoon. I like to think of not having any caffeine after about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, typically because caffeine, depending on how much you drink, but I believe its half-life is like 6 hours. So it takes quite a while to get out of your system. So, and only using the bed for sleeping. So again, our brains are too smart and they are so good at patterns. And so if you're laying in bed and scrolling on your phone and, it's just very easy for your brain to associate the bed with other activities besides sleeping. Okay, just wanted to make sure it's still recording. And finally, having a calm and quiet sleep environment. So making sure you're comfortable. You have a comfortable bed, pillow, you've got your blankets, whatever this looks like on an individual basis. Making sure your bedroom is cool. They say that it should be about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body temperature raises when you sleep. So having a cooler environment can help you stay asleep and not wake up in the middle of the night all sweaty and hot. And making sure it's dark and quiet. Unless you like a nightlight. I don't like a nightlight. I'm gonna go back. I feel like I included in here, but I feel like I'm just gonna talk about it. There's just so much other things you can do. These are just kind of a basic set of guidelines that might help you with your sleep hygiene. But if there's anything people want to share, and I can share some things, I have a pillow mist that is a stress pillow mist. It's like eucalyptus or something from Bath & Body Works. And again, brains and their patterns, spray it on my pillow, and I feel like the scent, alerts my brain, hey, we're going to bed, it's bedtime. I prefer showering at night just because, again, with your body's temperatures, your body temperature raises in the middle of the night. And so something that helps me sleep is raising my temperature and then cooling it off before I go to bed. When you get out of the shower, there's water on your skin, you're a little bit cooler, your hair is all wet and everything. So this is just a couple things that I like to do that I feel like kind of help me to get ready for bed and to relax and everything. So I'd like to give a couple minutes just to discuss, see if anybody had anything to add to that. All right, and finally, how does stress impact sleep? So it's kind of a vicious cycle, insomnia. You're just having difficulty going to sleep. So unable to fall asleep or stay asleep. You wake up the next day, you're tired. And again, unable to regulate emotions. You're just not able to control the stress, which stress leads to insomnia. So these two things kind of they go very hand in hand. And having sleep issues impacts stress issues, and having stress issues will cause sleep issues. So there's a lot of ways that the stress in our lives can impact our body. Physically, you can get headaches, muscle aches, fatigue, low libido, GI problems, and are more susceptible to illnesses. Again, stress and sleep are so intertwined, and I feel like these things also can apply to sleep. Also, again, lowered immune response. And so if you're very stressed and also lacking sleep, you're kind of really in for it. And I find that that's typically when I will get sick. Mentally, stress also, of course, impacts us pretty hard with anxiety and restlessness. There's an inability to focus. There can be memory issues, overwhelming feelings, irritability, and depression. And finally, behaviorally, this can look like overeating, undereating, emotional outburst. You might be more likely to abuse drugs or alcohol. You might have a decrease in socialization or a decrease in physical activity, which of course, those things can affect our mental and physical well-being as well. So it really impacts all 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, which is why stress is such an important thing to be able to control and kind of monitor within yourself. And the OR is just a petri dish of stress. There's a lot of stressful cases, which, there's so much with that, but, it could stem from a lack of knowledge, being put into cases that you might not be comfortable with. The unknown of what's going to happen during this case. This is a high risk case, it's a long case, or I know this case is going to be difficult and this causes me stress and anxiety. It's very, very technically demanding. There's just a lot of knowledge and technical skills. It can be very demanding, daunting, and overwhelming, especially for our new people coming in who have not experienced the OR. There's a lot of high emotional stakes. Grey's Anatomy was definitely being over dramatic, but not always. I've definitely had some moments where I was like, man, this could be on the TV show and it would be an excellent episode and a tearjerker. There's just a lot of stress. There's a lot of emotions. There's stress on both sides of it, on the patient side, the family side, and on our side as well, just because we care. So there's so many ways that stress can show up in the OR. And how can we manage stress? I feel like we get told this a lot of meditate and yoga and everything, but it really does work, especially when practiced a lot. So meditating, journaling, shifting your mindset, and connecting with loved ones, again, that social connection. And then physically, working out, practicing yoga, eating a balanced diet, and again, making sure you get outside. And now I would like to, take another 5 minutes or so to share our favorite ways to manage stress. So for me, I personally love reading. I like playing video games or crocheting. I like doing kind of a task that's very low effort and easy, something to maybe get my mind off the stress. Physically, I personally do really like practicing yoga or Pilates. And I feel like it's a lot easier to get out of our heads when we're being forced to get into our bodies. So yeah, I take about 5 minutes and discuss. And there's something that I was taught in therapy and I also find to be incredibly helpful. And I feel like it can just be applied everywhere. I mean, I do this when I sleep, I do this in the car, I do this in pretty much any situation. And it's just a method that doesn't require, needing to go somewhere or needing to have a physical object for, I can do it at work under a mask. I don't need to go to a special room or anything. So it's called square breathing. And I feel like it's decently self-explanatory, but you're basically breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and holding for 4. So I'd like to practice that with everybody. So we're gonna breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathing out, 2, 3, 4, and holding. 2, 3, 4. How does everybody feel? Do we like that? I like that. And yeah, this is something I just apply all the time whenever I'm just feeling a little bit of stress. When you're stressed, I feel like you tend to hold your breath a lot or not take in big, deep belly breaths. And so it almost worsens it, kind of like hyperventilating during a panic attack. So, and so I kind of wanted to touch on, I'm sharing this with you guys, of course, for you guys to apply in your day-to-day lives, but what can you guys and myself do for our fellow employees, and how can we provide stress and support for them? And there's a couple ways to do this. So emotion and support, and that could look like listening without judgment and showing empathy. We have very difficult jobs. We all have very difficult jobs that affect us in very different ways, and sometimes the best thing to do is talk it through. And it's really nice to have somebody listen and empathize or sympathize with your situation. Acknowledging the stressors is a big one too. I feel like this OR does a very, very good job of it, but a lot of other places I've worked kind of like to sweep things under the rug of like, oh, well, this is what you signed up for. This is your job. And it's like, of course, I signed up for this on purpose and I like what I do. However, that doesn't mean that, patient deaths or very difficult cases or very sad cases don't get to me. I'm a human too. And there's also stressors that might be outside of work, because we all have lives outside of work. And that could be, grief, increased workloads, both in work or out of work, becoming a new parent. There's just a lot of things that can cause stress both in work and out. And then providing access. And this can look like mental health services and spaces to relax, and time also to unwind. I know with, this field of work, it's a little bit difficult to have that time, but I just feel like it should be emphasized that it's okay to need a second to breathe, especially when dealing with those very difficult cases, especially when dealing with difficult long cases. And I feel like there are mental health services here that I've heard of. However, I feel like a lot of people are scared to access these services or are kind of unsure of how to access these services. I know that they're on this source, but again, I think it's so important to emphasize that mental health and stress is important to take care of, and that we all need help sometimes. And then how can we provide better support for better sleep? Reducing stress, that's a big one. That will definitely help with sleep. And encouraging rest, encouraging time off, encouraging resting time, encouraging employees to sleep. And also respecting that time off, which means, when I'm home, I'm not working. I'm not checking my email. I'm not answering phone calls unless I'm on call, of course. But it is really important to take time away from work. And I kind of want to emphasize the second point, just because this is something I've seen in the OR where it's, I don't want to say encouraged, but it's almost shown off of like, oh, I worked 16 hours. I worked 19 hours. I just worked 24 hours straight. And I would really love for it eventually, I would love to see that the OR and all of healthcare kind of shifts away from this mindset of like, I need to be a robot and not have physical or mental needs. And I just need to work as long as possible. Because, in a lot of other fields, working a 24-hour shift is just simply unfathomable. They would never do that. And so I want to just stress that I think it's important to encourage, like, hey, you need to go home and sleep. And I do think this hospital does a great job, especially being on transplant, of making sure their employees are well rested and have relief and have time to, eat and everything. But I just want to emphasize. So, in conclusion, sleep is essential for our mental and physical health, and stress greatly impacts sleep and vice versa. Kind of obvious things, but we kind of dove a little bit into what that looks like. Q&A, any questions, anything OR related, anything sleep or stress related? a big shout outs. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day to come and listen to a student talk to you about this kind of stuff. I really appreciate it. Here's a QR code for my evaluation form. It will take like 2 seconds. It's just 5 questions. It's just so I can know how to improve future presentations and just get better at it. And then these are sources, and I said I was going to touch on this book. So this is the book that I had read in my stress and sleep class, and I honestly, honest to God, I talk about it constantly. I'm always referencing it. I really enjoyed that class, and not only did I feel like it was very helpful to, like, you know, my career in lifestyle medicine, but just to myself. I mean, I seriously noticed just my sleep got so much better after learning about it. And while it was a class and there was homework and I had to read it, I genuinely enjoyed this book quite a bit. And I have bought several copies for friends. So if you are ever curious or want more information, this book I feel like does an excellent job of going into a lot of detail. And oh, I've got an audience member up here. And yeah, there is a free PDF online as well that I like to share to people. So just putting that out there, that if you are interested, this book is where I've gotten a lot of my information from. And more sources, and more sources. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys for watching.